Enough talk. This is the time to act. The words of Ehud Olmert just hours after his Kadima party had come out on top in the recent Israeli elections. Strong words indeed from the Prime Minister-elect. But does he mean it? The situation suggests that he'd better mean it, to act speedily if it really is his determined plan to carry out another major withdrawal from the occupied areas, this time in the West Bank, and to act without hesitation. The new Israeli leader continues to proclaim that he will carry out his withdrawal policy, that bequeathed by the incapacitated Ariel Sharon, unilaterally. Only once it has been categorically established that there is no real partner for dialogue on the Palestinian side. We will not wait forever. How long we wait will not be measured in years, is the phrase Mr. Olmert employs. But this week, in advance of Israel going away on the collective week-long Passover holiday, coalition talks got underway between Kadima and its potential partners who hope to govern Israel in the years ahead. Constructive ambiguity was the famous phrase about diplomacy coined by former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. Down the years, much use has been made of constructive ambiguity by Israeli leaders as they addressed the future of the areas which Israel occupied as a result of the 1967 Six-Day War, the West Bank and Gaza. Now again, constructive ambiguity is being tested within the coalition talks, as Kadima talks of implementing the next phase of separation, that is withdrawal, within 2 years. 2 years, however, could be too long, much too long. If he doesn't push it through now, say within a year at the utmost, he'll never do it, says one prominent political insider. That assessment is fast becoming part of accepted Israeli political parlance. Small wonder that those potential coalition partners on the right, who are not that happy with relinquishing land, are trying to add more ambiguity and more time to the withdrawal plan. For what really interests the bulk of Olmert's potential coalition allies is economic reform and winning the new government's commitment to a genuine and a very expensive social spending agenda. Focus on this other central issue, which is very much now on the national agenda, and Olmert could find himself diverted permanently from his declared intent to establish the nation's permanent borders. As has been the case since Israel's presence in the West Bank began 38 years ago, ignoring quick time has been an enemy of those seeking to stabilize the Palestinian-Israeli conflict in one way or another. The past week's volatile events on the Israeli-Gaza front underline just how pressing the need is, not just for determined decision-making, but for resolute action. Shortly after the 1967 Six-Day War, Israel's then triumphant defense minister Moshe Dayan famously declared, "We're awaiting a phone call from the Arab side so that we can discuss the future of the territories and peace." That phone call never came. Israel went ahead and acted unilaterally in a different direction, entrenching itself in the West Bank and Gaza. Time towards settling the Palestinian-Israeli dispute was indeed lost. The Kissinger concept of constructive ambiguity also helped in the bearing of various other efforts at settling the century-old conflict. As moments for possible rapprochement came and went, Israel chipped itself new temporary borders and built settlements all around the West Bank and Gaza. Time was also ill-used with the concluding of the Oslo peace deal. Then, during the 90s, future peace was predicated on Israelis and Palestinians easing their differences gradually along a set and drawn-out timetable towards a full peace. It was a timetable that was never adhered to, and again the precious moment when the whole Israeli-Palestinian relationship might have been permanently changed was lost. The moment now is also ripe for action because of the international climate. The West, and indeed even much of the Arab world, shows understanding for the idea that Hamas should, in Ehud Olmert's description, be considered a hostile authority. Some even actively support that approach adopted by Israel, the understanding that since Hamas is now in power, there really is no alternative to Israel acting unilaterally. And what of the attitude of the Israeli people? Whatever their views were then on Sharon's withdrawal from Gaza, more than half a year later, most Israelis would say in retrospect that it was the right thing to have done, the right thing for Israel. However much anguish it created, Israel now finds itself remarkably more united than it has been for many, many years, united behind a common purpose. The elections 2 weeks ago demonstrably put on the table a demand by the Israeli people for a new social agenda. But equally, there was a ringing endorsement in favor of unilateral action to disengage Israel from the Palestinians. It would be to betray the political will of the Israeli people if Ehud Olmert were to squander his promised plan to withdraw. But if he succeeds, he carries off the prize of transforming his centrist philosophy, that is, separation from the Palestinians, into the fulcrum of Israeli policies, and makes his Kadima party the fulcrum of Israeli politics for the foreseeable future. This is indeed a truly critical juncture in Israel's history, and time indeed for action from a true leader. Chag Sameach, a happy Passover to all, and a happy Easter.